Leaders in Law podcast, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of the most successful lawyers in every episode. Brought to you by Conventus Law. Hello everyone, from wherever you are in the world, welcome to the Leaders in Law podcast. I'm your host, Shazad Burden, and I'm thrilled to welcome our guest today, Jeanette Chan. Jeanette Chan, welcome to the show. Jeanette is the Chief Legal Compliance and Risk Officer at Airwallex. I would love to just dive straight in and get you to tell us what brought you to the law. That more than 30 years ago, I believe, you've been working in law.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm so glad to be speaking with you and doing this podcast. So in relation to this particular question, I don't really know where I should start, but I will start by saying that I was always encouraged by my parents, in particular my mother, to work very hard and to have a career. She was a working woman, and she had a strong influence in my life, in my professional upbringing. She was not very well educated, and she worked hard to support my father, her father, and then the entire family. And she encouraged us to work hard and to study hard and to have a very good career. And she really made sure that we had a good education. And it was her dream that one of her children, and I have 4 in the family, one of them would be a professional. She didn't really know what that meant, other than that, hey, being a professional would mean having a good career, having a good income, and being able to support the family. A profession meaning either a doctor, a dentist, an accountant, or a lawyer. And I didn't really know what I wanted to be, and I became interested in the law because of a movie that I watched on television at a very young age.
Yeah.
And that movie was about a Holocaust litigation. And there was this litigator who was suing some war criminals. And he was very articulate and very successful in putting the defendant behind bars. I was really, really moved by the story, by the movie. I thought the guy was so good looking, such a hunk, was incredibly articulate.
Yeah.
And it was, and he had some very, very skillful arguments. And he obviously won the case and put those criminals behind bars.
Yeah.
So that was really my first exposure to the law. And that basically started or put the seed in my thinking of becoming a lawyer.
So you were at the same law firm for 30 years, I believe. Could you tell us a little bit about what it was that attracted you to practice in a multinational law firm in Hong Kong?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I was with the same law firm for many years, and I think nowadays that's like, unheard of, right? People do move from firms to firms. And I basically stumbled into working for a multinational firm sort of unexpectedly. So first of all, I studied law at the University of British Columbia in Canada. And after Canada, I decided to go back to school, and I went to Harvard. And before I started my master's at Harvard, I was introduced to a mentor. And first I should say that I chose Harvard mainly because of my mentor, Jerry Cohen. So after UBC, after I articled, I applied to 2 law schools. they were Columbia Law School and also Harvard. I really wanted to live in New York because my sister was studying there and I was just intoxicated by the energy there. I wanted to be in New York with my sister and I thought it was just so cool. It showed that only smart people would be able to work and be successful in New York, and I just aspired to be one of them. So I applied to those two schools, one in New York, right, with Columbia, and at Harvard because everybody, wanted to go to Harvard, and I wanted to see if I would actually get in also. And I was very lucky and fortunate that I got admitted to both schools. Then I was fortunate to be introduced to Jerry Cohen. I met him and I sought, for advice from him. I told him I really wanted to live in New York, and maybe because of that, I should go to Columbia. And he told me, no, 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 no. What I should do is to go to Harvard because it has at that time at least, had a better master's in law program. It was more international and also had a very good East Asian legal studies. He said it was the best East Asian legal studies because he started that, that legal studies at Harvard. And then he said, after, studying at Harvard, you can join a law firm in New York, such as Paul Weiss. Then you'd be able to live in New York and get trained in New York. And so I thought that was a great advice. And I completely adore Jerry. So whatever he told me, I would follow to the T. So I went to Harvard, and then I joined Paul Weiss as he suggested. And that is an international firm. And actually, at that time, for China practice, there were only just three law firms: Paul Weiss, Kadir, which does not exist anymore, and Baker McKenzie. I joined Paul Weiss, and I started in New York. And then he advised me to go to Shanghai and Hong Kong. Uh, so I again, followed his advice. I was transferred to Hong Kong, and then from Hong Kong to Shanghai, and then I moved back to New York. And then after New York, I came back to Hong Kong, and I just stayed in Hong Kong for the firm. Why didn't I leave Paul Weiss, and why did I stay there for 30 plus years? Uh, some would say that I was just stupid. Some would, but I beg to, differ. I beg to disagree. I'm actually a very, very loyal person.
I was thinking that. I was already thinking that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I loved the firm. Right? I loved the leadership of the firm over the years, and in particular, all of the lawyers that I worked with. I was given the opportunity to grow. I was trained by excellent partners. They were never, hesitant to teach me and mentor me. It is a firm where, you would be rewarded for doing the right things. And the right things, and actually, I'm so proud to say that because the partners were rewarded by being reviewed by other partners on a few things. One is obviously whether that partner is providing excellent services to our clients, whether we are treating our colleagues with dignity and respect, and whether we are giving back to the community and helping the needed. So those are very good values of the firm. And my wings were never clipped at the firm. They encouraged me. They gave me the room to grow. And so I, didn't really see a need to join another firm. I mean, the grass always seems green on the other side. But and of course, it was never always rosy at Paul Weiss. But I think all in all, I was very happy at the firm, and I felt really responsible to the firm for doing the right thing. And I just didn't really want to leave the firm with the great colleagues that and the friends that I made, and the client that I was able to develop while practicing at Allwise. When you move to another firm, there was never an assurance that those clients would follow you.
Yeah, that's
So
true. Yeah.
that's the reason why I stayed for so many years.
So obviously, at some point, the opportunity for you to become the managing partner came up. And I'm always curious because usually, well, most of the lawyers I know thousands of lawyers, most of us, we have legal training, but not business training. We don't have managerial training. We don't do MBAs typically. We study law. So I'm always curious to ask, how did you manage or cope with the transition to being the managing partner? And was there extra training that you did? Did you choose to do, or was it a case of learning on the job?
It was the latter. It was really learning on the job. And
Right.
frankly, I am not sure that I, was a great managing partner, in the sense that I didn't really know, you know, what it meant to be a managing partner, frankly. It was a very gradual process. It was sort of natural because I was in Hong Kong, as you know, and we had a very small office. The practice for in Asia, we actually had three offices, right? Beijing, Hong Kong, and Tokyo. And I was working very closely with all the associates in both Hong Kong and Beijing. And I always cared for them. I wanted to make sure that the offices would run efficiently, that the associates that we would hire the right associates, that they would get the right training, and that we would work together as one unit, and that there would be support for them. So as I was doing a lot of that already, the New York executive, the management committee saw the work that I was doing, and that I basically leaned in and just took on whatever that was needed that I felt that it needed to be done. I just raised my hand and I said, hey, that needed to be done, and I'm just going to do it. And it simply was by doing it that I learned. And I can't say that I didn't make mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes, but I was always the first to admit the mistakes. One of the things that I do want to emphasize is that it is not a weakness to admit one has made a mistake. It is not a weakness to apologize for the mistakes that one has made. I think it actually shows confidence and strength to say, hey, I could have done it better. I could have done this better. And I think that's why 360 review is very important for the people I worked with, or they believe they worked for me, to tell me what I could do better. There's always room for improvement. So I think to be a good manager is really to be a good leader, to listen to what they need, to provide the support, to be there to uh, help them, to be a good teacher, to show them the path, and with the right attitude of doing the right thing.
I
So that was how I sort of transitioned. And as I said, there was no any kind of professional training of how one can be a manager. And
Yeah.
of course, after I became a manager, I did listen to podcasts and did read about, how I should manage. And those are all very helpful. But I think training on the ground and doing it on the ground, and uh, learning from the mistakes is very important. Is very important.
You mentioned your mentor that you had, and how you more than closely
Yes.
followed his advice. You did exactly what everything he
Yes, I
suggested.
follow strictly his
But
advice.
followed strictly his advice. Did Paul Weiss have a mentoring scheme?
When I was there, not officially a
Mm,
mentoring scheme, but it was always encouraged that we should, the partners should train the associates, and the senior associates should train the more junior. One of the elements of any kind of review is, are you a good mentor? So that was always taken into consideration, even though there was no formal
Right.
mentorship.
Right.
However, after I became the managing partner, I did put in place a more formal mentorship program, basically uh, pairing, right, two associates together. And when I was taking care of both offices, I always want to make sure the pairing was between offices. So not within the same office, because I think that is the only way to bring people together, even when they're not in the same office, right? It's more important that we bring people together when they're not in the same office, because you don't, right? You work with them, but you don't really see them. You don't really know them. You don't really, before at that time, we didn't have Zoom, right? Didn't have video calls. So it's all just telephone calls. You couldn't really see their facial expression. You didn't really understand what they were saying. So I do think having that video call, right, that being able to see the other side does make a difference, bring you closer together. So without that, I mean, even at that time, so we had with a cross office mentoring program, I believe was very helpful in bringing the team together.
Having been at Paul Weiss for 30 years, what prompted you to then switch to the fintech company Airwallex at that juncture in your career?
I have to say, I mean, all of these, I was just very, very lucky. I mean, I feel very, very fortunate that all these years, all these decisions, or all these paths that I took, that they sort of, I fumbled into them. I mean, if that's the right way of saying it, or that they fell upon me, or yeah, that I just had very, very good friends. So I switched into a fintech, not because I really, decided, hey, fintech was the great industry and let me just, jump into that, and hey, which company should I therefore join? It wasn't like that at all. As you mentioned, I was at Paul Weiss for over 30 years. I realized that if I continued to stay there, which I could, it would be very, very difficult for anybody else to step up and to experience what I experienced, to take on the same opportunity that I had, to be able to bring the practice forward and or upward to the next level. So I just started to think about, okay, I should start, training up somebody, identifying somebody to take over.
Right.
And because I actually have a very big personality, and because I was with the firm for such a long time, that it was very difficult for anybody to really step up, uh, to really have that kind of identity with me continue to be at the firm.
Right.
So I thought that, well, maybe I should start considering exiting, whether working at Paul Weiss part-time or totally exiting and joining, or doing something different.
Yeah.
And clearly, I wasn't going to join another law firm, not after 33 years at Paul Weiss.
Yes.
So I started talking to, friends and actually some clients, and seeking advice.
Yeah.
I did not want to just to sit on, boards. I wanted to actually to continue to have real operational or line responsibility.
Right.
And I didn't want to join. I wanted to join a company just because I wanted to have a real seat at the table, so to speak. I've always had a seat at the table. I have I'm never shy to voice my opinion. I'm never shy to make sure that my opinions are heard. And but it's very different, right? So I wanted to really experience working in-house, what that meant, but I didn't really want to go to a very large established corporation because I didn't think that I would be able to add a lot of value. I would
Mm,
only be, because there would be a lot of processes in place already.
right.
So I wanted to join a growth company. I wasn't thinking of a startup per se,
Mm-hmm.
and I was introduced to Airwallex around 2018, actually initially through work. I was approached by another company wanting to do some transaction with Airwallex,
Mm,
and that was my first time learning about Airwallex. We did due diligence of the company, and I was quite impressed with the company. At that time, Airwallex was still quite a young, was only just established for 2 years, 3 years,
right.
and but it already was doing incredibly well.
Yeah.
And I guess it was just one thing after another that other people started to recommend Airwallex to me. And these are the people who I respect personally and professionally. And in particular, the chief investment officer of Tencent suggested that fintech would be a growing, would be the industry
Mm,
to basically to join because
mm,
of the opportunities that this industry would bring,
yeah.
and suggested Airwallex, and that's how I came to join Airwallex. So I've actually always been very, very lucky in all of the decisions that I make.
So, what are the sort of differences for your day-to-day work from being the managing partner to now the chief legal compliance and risk officer?
Very, very different. I don't even know how to start. When I first joined Airwallex, there was a legal department and a compliance team, but they were very, very small. I think altogether we had around globally around under 10. Okay, under 10 people in the legal and compliance team. And fast forward 3.5, almost 4 years later, we now have almost 60 people in the team.
Mm,
And so we also, even though financially very stable, did not put in a lot of resources, right? Did not allocate a lot of resources in legal and compliance initially. So I had to set up all the entire processes and hiring the right people, putting in place the processes, coming up with principles and policies for the company, and considering all of the local jurisdiction that we operate in, which there are many. Now we have over 19 locations that we have offices in, and so everything has to come up from scratch. I had to learn a lot about the new technology and deploying, using technology and helping us to become more efficient. I had to learn about fintech and learn about the business and the products,
mm-hmm.
and set up also the risk function. So the scope is very broad,
Mm,
and it doesn't end. It's 24/7, right? At wise for what I was doing, it was
mm,
mainly transactional. So you complete a deal, you move on to another deal. You have a
yeah.
little breather for a couple of days or a couple of hours at least.
I find that hard to believe. A couple of days, I don't think so.
Yes,
I'm
well, a couple of hours, right, before you get
a
on to
couple
the
of
next deal, or even if
yeah,
you have a few
yeah.
deals together,
Right,
they stop it, right?
right.
But at Airwallex, things don't stop, right? Deals don't stop, issues don't stop to service,
Wow.
and I
Yeah.
always have to think of, hey, where. where are the blind spots? What do I have to think about? What do I have to mitigate and consider could happen to avoid them from happening? So I mean, it is very challenging, but incredibly rewarding. As somebody said at Airwallex, one would never get onset Alzheimer because your brain is all constantly being used. You're
That's
always
great.
working.
Oh, that's a good. Wow, that's a great thing. Good to know. I'll have to start reading about fintech.
Yes.
Jeanette, what do you find most rewarding about your career?
Opportunities and the chances that I've gotten
Mm,
to learn about different industries, to learn about different arrangements, to meet interesting people all
yeah,
over the world,
yeah,
to be able to be an advisor,
yeah.
to able to tell them what to do and being paid for it, and right? And be able to be a good teacher, role model to
Mhm,
my colleagues, and importantly, to be able to pay it forward,
mm,
uh, to basically be a model for people who come behind me
mm.
and in helping them in their careers.
I completely agree. The constant learning was actually that was the reason that attracted me to the law because there is constant learning because there are constant updates, industry changes, legal changes. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I completely agree.
I mean, and you're constantly learning and
Mm.
being paid for it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
unlike
Oh.
going to school, you learn and then you have to pay.
Hmm.
But here, you
Yes.
learn every day,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's very, very interesting
Yeah.
topics,
Yeah.
very challenging issues that you have to deal with, and I have learned so much from my
Mm.
colleagues all over these years
Mm.
that it is something that I'm very grateful for.
You are certainly already a very, very accomplished person, but are there further accomplishments, whether within the law or outside of the law, that you still hope to achieve?
Oh, well, thank you for saying that I have a lot of accomplishments. I think there is always room for improvement.
But only
The
only a very
other,
great lawyer, a very great person, a very great thinker thinks like that. I find the more busy a person, the more busy they need to be. People fit so much into their day when they're that
yes,
way inclined. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, but that actually, I believe, makes me a better person, right? Because then I can really be of better use to myself and to others,
Mm,
and contribute to more. I mean, what are the other things that I would like to do? I would like to be able to be a very good teacher. I've always wanted to do one day, I mean, I was just telling my colleagues the other day,
yeah.
regulators' engagement. How do you write a letter to regulators, right? How do you, like, it's not just telling the regulators what we have done, but it is really convincing them, but convincing them in a
Mm,
very positive, convincing way.
yeah.
Being transparent without having to share more than you need to share. So I would really like to be a teacher. That is something that I would like to be able to accomplish as a good teacher. Uh,
Yeah.
I uh, I would like to have my husband always says that, hey, you want to be a teacher, you have to have more patience, and that is something that I have to learn is that
Mm,
to be more patient.
mm.
Um, and I guess if I'm not a lawyer, I would like to be a party planner. I love to party. I love to tell people what to do.
I
I
did not
love to have a good
expect you to say that. I was not expecting that.
I just love to party. I love to organize things, and I just think it would be so much fun. And I love beautiful things. So to have
Yeah.
a great party,
Yeah.
right? Beautifully decorated, beautifully arranged, everybody happy.
Yeah.
So rewarding.
That's so funny. I can just imagine if you went for a job interview and they ask you, what transferable skills do you have? I can't imagine what you from your time as a managing
I'm
partner.
a
I'm sure
great party planner.
you planned. I'm sure you must have planned so many events through being a managing partner over 30 years. I mean, yes.
Yes, I have, and I must say I'm pretty good at it.
Jeanette, the final question I always ask all of my guests: what advice would you give to your younger self if you could?
Stay chill, to basically have more confidence in yourself, and don't be too harsh.
Mm-hmm.
Be brave to make the mistakes
Mm.
and take on opportunities. Be bold, and be brave. The other thing would be to really set aside time for yourself. I actually, everybody now knows I exercise a lot, or at least I try to exercise every day.
Yeah.
And I must say, I regret that I didn't start earlier. I started almost about, no, yeah, it's been 20 years, but I could have started a lot earlier. And I think that actually has helped me in my mental wellness,
Mm-hmm.
because it gave me it has given me a channel of relief for me that has been very helpful, where I actually set aside an hour to do something for myself, where actually after that hour of exercise,
Yeah.
I feel a lot more refreshed and I can restart again. So I
Yeah.
think that is very important. So I think setting aside time for yourself, whether it is just do nothing, veg, it's okay. I mean, just have a bit of time and be bold to make the mistakes
Mm.
that one will inevitably make in one's career.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Jeanette, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to you.
Well, thank you
And
for your time, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to share with you my thoughts.
it was a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Leaders in Law podcast, brought to you by Conventus Law. To learn more about Conventus Law and read about the latest legal news, please visit www.conventuslaw.com. Until the next time, bye for now.